Most grandfathers, when they hit their limit, go quiet for a week and let it pass because family is family and what are you going to do? I hit my limit on a Wednesday night in June and had an attorney on the phone before sunrise, but we'll get to that. Wednesday, June 11th, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 10:52 p.m. I had been asleep in my recliner since about 9, which is the right and earned privilege of a 64-year-old retired high school shop teacher who gets up at 5 regardless of what time he went down. The television was on, some cooking competition where everyone cried about their grandmother's recipes. My kind of Wednesday. My phone buzzed on the end table. Agnes Whitaker. Now, Agnes Whitaker is 78 years old and has lived next door to my son and his wife for 11 years. She makes fruitcake at Christmas that nobody admits they like, but everyone eats. She waters her marigolds in a housecoat at 7 in the morning, and she has never once called me after 8:30 at night. Not even 2 winters ago, when a pipe burst in her kitchen and she needed someone to shut off the main. She texted me for that. So when her name lit up my screen at 10:52 on a Wednesday in June, I was sitting up before I finished reading it. Agnes? The voice on the other end was low and careful, the way someone sounds when they are choosing every single word because some of them could break something. Glenn, I'm sorry to call so late. I wouldn't if she started again. I've been hearing Zoe through the fence for 2 nights, crying off and on. Tonight I couldn't sleep for it anymore, so I went over and knocked. I had my feet on the floor already. She answered the door herself, Agnes continued, in her pajamas. It was close to 11 at night, Glenn. There was nobody else in that house. The room went very still. She told me Blake and Kristen left Monday morning, 3 days ago now, for Jackson's Lacrosse showcase up in Bentonville. She said a neighbor girl was supposed to check on her, but Zoe hasn't seen her since Tuesday afternoon. She told me she had cereal for dinner tonight because she didn't know how to work the stove. I was already moving toward the door. Before I hung up, Agnes said one more thing, slow and careful, like she understood the weight of it. She said Zoe's first question when she answered the door wasn't, "Where's my mom or can you call someone?" She asked if you knew, Glenn. That's the first thing she said. Does my grandpa know? I got my keys. I didn't bother with a jacket. I called Zoe on the drive over. It rang twice. Grandpa? Hey, sweetheart. You all right in there? A small pause. I think so. She was 9 years old and already hedging her own feelings down to nothing, so she wouldn't be a burden to anyone. My jaw tightened so hard I could feel it in the back of my neck. Is the front door locked? Yes, sir. Have you eaten tonight? I had cereal. The milk was almost gone, so I didn't use very much. I was stopped at a red light on Memorial Drive. I sat there with both hands on the wheel and breathed through my nose. Zoe, listen to me. Pack a bag, bring your toothbrush and whatever stuffed animal you sleep with. I will be there in 7 minutes. Silence. Then, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. Did I do something wrong? Because Jackson got to go and I asked Mom if I could come too, and she said it was just for lacrosse families, and I don't play lacrosse. So I thought maybe. She stopped, swallowed something down. I thought maybe if I'd been better at something, she would have found a way. The light turned green. I didn't move. Zoe, you hear me? You did not do one single thing wrong. Not one. Now go pack that bag. I'll see you in 7 minutes. Okay, Grandpa. Agnes was on the front porch when my headlights swung up the driveway. Zoe was beside her on the steps, a small rolling bag at her feet, and a stuffed rabbit, orange, worn at the ears, tucked under one arm. She'd had that rabbit since she was 4 years old. When my headlights hit her, she stood up. Then she ran. She didn't say a word when she reached me. She just grabbed on and held, the way a child holds on to something they were afraid might never come. I picked her up, lighter than I remembered, and I held her there in the driveway of my son's house, while Agnes stood on the porch with her fingers pressed to her mouth, trying to hold something together that kept wanting to come apart. I carried Zoe to the truck, buckled her in myself, tucked the seatbelt careful around her. Before I closed the door, Agnes touched my arm. Glenn, I have a friend, Gretchen Aldridge, family law attorney, right there on South Boston Avenue in Tulsa, 23 years of practice and the least patient woman I have ever met with people who have it coming. I'll send you her number. Right now, Agnes. She already had her phone out. Zoe was asleep before we cleared the neighborhood. Both hands folded in her lap, rabbit against the window, breathing slow and even like she had finally decided it was safe enough to let her guard all the way down. I drove back through the warm June dark in silence. Radio off, just the highway and the sound of the air coming in from the cracked window and Zoe's slow breathing in the back seat. At the interchange off 71st, I stopped at a red light. I opened Instagram. I already knew what I was going to find. I found it anyway. My son, his wife, Jackson, posted at 8:17 that evening from what looked like a lacrosse field in the last gold light of the day. Jackson had his helmet off, grinning so wide you could count every tooth. My daughter-in-law had her arm around him. My son had his hand on the boy's shoulder and was looking into the camera like a man who had not carried one heavy thing in his entire life. Caption: Our boy killed it today. So proud of this kid. Family time in Bentonville. Our boy. Family time. 2 phrases, not a single word about who wasn't there. The car behind me honked. I sat through it. It honked again, longer this time. Yeah, me too. I got Zoe settled into the guest room. Extra blanket, glass of water on the nightstand, the little nightlight in the outlet, because she'd told me once, a long time ago, offhand like it wasn't important, that she didn't love the dark. I sat on the edge of the bed until her breathing went long and even. Then I went to the kitchen. I made coffee I didn't need. I pulled a yellow legal pad from the junk drawer and I wrote everything down. Every date, every detail, every word Agnes had told me, every word Zoe said on the phone, as close to verbatim as I could get. The Instagram caption, the timestamps, the name of the neighbor girl who was supposed to be checking in and had not been seen since Tuesday. This wasn't anger. I've been angry plenty of times. Anger shakes your hand and walks out by morning. This was something colder and more deliberate than anger. This was a man at a kitchen table at 1 in the morning who had decided that certain things do not get walked back from. At 1:43 a.m., Agnes's text came through. Gretchen Aldridge family law. The message Agnes sent with it said simply, "She doesn't lose. I've seen her work." I saved the number, then I opened my laptop. By 3 a.m., I had 2 plane tickets to San Antonio booked for Friday morning, a junior suite at a hotel on the Riverwalk confirmed for 4 nights, and a voicemail left on Gretchen Aldridge's office line that said, "My name is Glenn Merritt. My 9-year-old adopted granddaughter was left alone in her home for 3 days, while her parents took their biological son to an out-of-state lacrosse showcase. No adequate supervision, no consistent adult contact. I need to understand every legal option available to me. I will be in your office the moment I am back in Tulsa." Then I called my son. 3:14 a.m. He wasn't going to answer. I didn't want him to answer. I wanted him to wake up the next morning in Bentonville, Arkansas, roll over in his hotel room, reach for his phone, and find a voicemail from his father waiting for him like a sealed envelope left on the counter. The beep came. "Blake?" My voice was calm, easy even, the tone of a man who is done being surprised by anything. "Just wanted you to know I've got Zoe. She's safe, she's sleeping, she's fine. Hope the showcase is everything you wanted it to be." I paused. "We'll talk when you're back." I hung up, walked down the hall, checked on Zoe one more time. She was curled on her side with both hands tucked under her cheek and the orange rabbit under her chin. Her face was completely smooth, no tension anywhere in it. She looked like exactly what she was. A child who had, for one night at least, stopped waiting to see if anyone was coming. I went back to my kitchen table, drank my coffee, and thought about what the next 10 days were going to look like for my son. He had absolutely no idea. Friday morning, Zoe came into the kitchen at 6:48 in her socked feet, hair going in 4 directions, rabbit hanging from one hand. She stopped in the doorway and looked at me, already dressed, already on my second cup. "Grandpa, where are we going?" "San Antonio, Texas. You and me, we leave in 2 hours." She blinked twice. "For real? Do I look like a man who invents vacations?" She considered me for exactly 2 seconds. Then she screamed, this high, bright, completely startled sound that bounced off my kitchen walls, and sprinted back down the hall to repack her bag. And I sat at my kitchen table in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and smiled into my coffee cup for the first time in 36 hours. That sound right there. That was the whole reason. San Antonio in June is hot the way only Texas manages to be hot, the kind that has a personal opinion about you. But the Riverwalk was beautiful, all stone and water and big cypress trees trailing over the canal, and Zoe stopped walking every 30 feet to look at something new. Fish in the water, a musician playing under a bridge, a family of ducks moving single file along the far bank like they had somewhere to be. We spent 4 days. Day 1, the zoo, where Zoe stood in front of the otter exhibit for 20 solid minutes and I stood behind her and led her. Day 2, SeaWorld, where she rode the same water slide 4 times and came back, each time soaked to the collar and completely without regret about it. The teenage attendant at the top was giving her a fist bump by the 3rd run. By the 4th, a small cluster of strangers at the bottom was hollering for her like she was competing in something official. She kind of was. Day 3 was a river walk boat tour and then dinner at a restaurant with cloth napkins and a bread basket that materialized before you'd even settled into your chair. I watched Zoe try shrimp for the first time, watched her make a different face with each one, heard her conduct a full running commentary on each individual shrimp, and watched her ultimately rule in favor of them. I watched her sit up straight and order her own food and thank the waiter without being reminded. I watched her laugh at something he said. A real laugh, the startled kind that you can't plan for. She looked like a child who had never been made to feel like an afterthought in her own family. That was when I understood how long it had been since I'd seen that, and that the disappearing of it had been so gradual I hadn't noticed the absence until something filled the space back in. But every night, every single one, after Zoe was asleep, I took my phone out to the small balcony off the hotel room, slid the door shut behind me, and called Gretchen Aldridge. Gretchen Aldridge had 23 years of family law in Tulsa and had apparently used up her lifetime allocation of small talk sometime around 2010. When I called the first night, she picked up on the second ring and said, "Start from the beginning. Give me dates and facts. Save the feelings for somewhere else." I talked for 35 minutes. She interrupted me 3 times, each time to nail down a specific date or pin down an exact phrase Zoe had used. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that is someone actually thinking, rather than collecting themselves. "Here's where you stand," she said. "Leaving a minor child under 10 without adequate adult supervision for more than 24 hours in Oklahoma meets the legal threshold for child endangerment. That is not open to interpretation. What your neighbor Agnes gives you is direct eyewitness testimony. That is significant. The child's own statements matter. The social media post timestamped during the period of neglect matters. The unreturned voicemail matters. So, what do we do?" 3 things, simultaneously. Court-ordered grandparent visitation rights. Oklahoma statute supports this where the child's best interest can be demonstrated, and given what you've handed me, that case is not a difficult one. A formal CPS referral, fully documented, fully supported, and a motion requesting a psychological evaluation of the home environment as it relates specifically to Zoe's welfare. I work with a child psychologist. She's thorough and she's fast. I held the balcony railing and looked down at the river lights below us. Does Zoe have to go to court? Not if I do this correctly, and I do this correctly. I believed her. There was something in the flatness of the way she said it, no performance, no reassurance, that made it more convincing than any reassurance would have been. The second night, Gretchen walked me through the financial side, the trust, the will revisions. She talked about irrevocable structures the same way she talked about everything else. Directly, without drama, the way you talk about something that has already been decided and simply needs to be executed. Once it's in place, she said, it cannot be changed. Not by your son, not by his wife, not by any attorney they bring in. You're certain? I filed 38 of them. Not one has been successfully challenged. So yes, Glenn, I'm certain. Have the documents ready when I land. They'll be on my desk. The third night I wasn't ready for. I was on the balcony with my phone, going through school records Zoe's teacher had emailed me, 2 years of notes, a pattern of behavioral observations, a written flag from the school counselor 8 months back about Zoe appearing withdrawn and disengaged from her classmates, when the balcony door slid open behind me. Zoe, pajamas, rabbit, squinting at me the way she squints at things she hasn't fully decided about yet. "Grandpa, who are you talking to?" "Work call, legal work, go back inside, it's late." She absorbed this. "Can I have some water?" "There's a bottle on the dresser." A pause. "Can I have the sparkling kind from the little refrigerator?" "I am currently on the telephone with an attorney who is building a legal case, and you are out here at 10 o'clock at night negotiating sparkling water from the minibar." She waited. "1 bottle, then you're in bed." She disappeared. I heard the small refrigerator open and close. I got back on the line with Gretchen. "Sorry about that 9-year-old interruption," I heard Gretchen said. "And then I will maintain this until the day I die." Somewhere beneath the precise professional surface of her voice, something that was almost warm. She sounds considerably more at ease than 3 days ago. She really is. Good. Hold on to that. The contrast between her documented behavioral decline at home and her current state while in your care will matter significantly in front of a judge. That distinction is going to do a lot of work for us. I wrote that down word for word. The fourth night was the one I genuinely was not prepared for. We were at a restaurant near the end of the river walk, white tablecloths, candles, the The kind of place where the breadbasket appears before you've fully unfolded your napkin. Zoe was on her second piece of bread. I'd told her she could have as much as she wanted, and she had taken that completely seriously. And I was watching her and thinking about nothing in particular, just watching her be comfortable in a chair and not performing anything for anyone. She put the bread down, went completely quiet, stared at the tablecloth for a moment. Then she looked up at me with those big brown eyes that take up most of her face when she's being serious about something. Grandpa, am I harder to love because I'm adopted? The restaurant kept moving around us. Someone laughed at the table behind me. A waiter went by with a full tray. There was music coming from somewhere near the water. Right there at that table, everything stopped. I set my fork down, I reached across the tablecloth, and I took both her hands in mine, small hands, warm, a little sticky from the bread, and I told her the truth. All of it. Every piece of it at the level a 9-year-old could carry and hold on to and actually use. I told her what adoption means, that it means someone chose her specifically. Not whoever showed up, not whoever was convenient, her. I told her that her birth mother was young and frightened, and that what she did was the hardest kind of love there is, the kind that costs everything. I told her that being chosen is not the consolation prize, it is the whole race. I told her that I had driven through the night and booked 2 plane tickets, and hired an attorney and was rewriting my will, and that every single bit of it was because she was worth every ounce of it, and more than I could say sitting at a restaurant table without embarrassing myself. Her eyes went shiny. She nodded slowly, the way she processes things, careful and complete, taking each piece in. Then she looked at my breadbasket. Can I have yours too? You can have all of it. And dessert? Order 2 things, whatever you want. She smiled. Slow at first, then bigger, then the real one, the one that starts quiet and then goes all the way up to her eyes and just lives there. I excused myself after dessert, stood at the sink in the restaurant bathroom, ran cold water over my wrists, and looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. I had held it together at that table because that was what she needed, and I'm her grandfather, and that is the whole job description. But somewhere up in Bentonville, Arkansas, at a lacrosse showcase, my son Blake Merritt had looked at his daughter sitting on the edge of her bed, said, "See you in a few days, kiddo," and closed the door. That thought, that one specific thought, was the one that made me dry my hands, straighten my collar, walk back out to that table, and make a decision that had been forming since the moment Agnes Whitaker's name lit up my phone. No more patience, no grace period, no letting Blake set the terms of anything. We were going home to Tulsa, and Gretchen Aldridge had work to do. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and tap the like while you're there. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to this channel. Drop something in the comments too. I read every single one of them. We landed back in Tulsa on a Sunday. Zoe fell asleep on my shoulder somewhere over Oklahoma with her rabbit in her lap and a half-eaten bag of pretzels in one hand. And a flight attendant saw us and moved on by without collecting the trash, quiet as anything, and I could have thanked her for a week for that. Blake's text had come through 2 days earlier, no punctuation, no explanation, 6 words. Need to talk when we're back. I forwarded it to Gretchen with one line. Monday morning, my house, 9 o'clock. She replied in under 4 minutes, I'll be there, bringing everything. Gretchen arrived at my front door at 8:57 a.m., gray blazer, flat shoes, a leather briefcase that had seen serious rooms before mine. She walked in, set her files on the dining room table, accepted a cup of coffee without ceremony, and sat down like she had been sitting at that table her entire professional life. I liked her more every time I was in a room with her. They don't know I'm here, she said, not looking up from her folder. They think it's a family conversation. The corner of her mouth moved about a millimeter. It is, an exceptionally well-documented one. My son's truck pulled into the driveway at 9:03. He came in first, Blake, 37 years old, still tan from the Arkansas sun, wearing a button-down like he'd thought about what to wear. He looked tired in the way that isn't about sleep. The deep kind, the kind that's been building from somewhere further inside than rest can reach. His wife came in right behind him, chin up, shoulders squared, the posture of someone who had spent the drive building her argument and arrived fully armed to deliver it. Blake started to speak, then he saw Gretchen. He stopped mid-step. Dad, who is? Blake, this is Gretchen Aldridge, family law attorney, 23 years in Tulsa. Please sit down, there's coffee. His wife's eyes went from Gretchen to the open folder on the table to me and back to Gretchen. Something moved behind them. Not fear yet, recalculation. We came here to have a family conversation, not a... Please sit down, Mrs. Merritt, Gretchen said. Just that, 4 words, perfectly level, perfectly immovable. My daughter-in-law sat down, not because she wanted to, because something in that tone made the alternative feel considerably worse. I had experienced that exact tone on the phone from San Antonio and understood it completely. Gretchen slid a single type page across the table. No build-up, no theater, just a document placed in front of them the way you place a fact that has already been established and simply needs to be acknowledged. Blake read it. Read it again. His wife read it and set it back down harder than necessary. A timeline, clean, precise, merciless. Monday, June 9th, Blake and Kristen Merritt depart with biological son Jackson for Bentonville, Arkansas. Minor child Zoe Merritt, age 9, remains at residence without confirmed adequate adult supervision. June 9th through June 11th, child observed alone by neighbor Agnes Whitaker. Child reported subsisting on cereal and limited available food. Agnes Whitaker contacts Glenn Merritt at 10:52 p.m. June 11th. Glenn Merritt retrieves Zoe Merritt from residence at 11:22 p.m. What is on that page, Gretchen said, has a legal definition under Oklahoma state statute. We are not here to discuss whether it occurred. It occurred. Agnes Whitaker has provided a signed written statement. We have the child's own account recorded and notarized. We have time-stamped social media documentation from during the period in question. She slid a second page across the table. We are here to discuss what comes next. My daughter-in-law started to speak. Blake put his hand on her arm. Firmly, she stopped. I noted that, filed it. First decisive thing my son had done in this entire situation. 2 weeks late, but noted. Gretchen laid out 3 legal actions, already drafted, ready to file the moment she walked out of my house. Court-ordered grandparent visitation rights, legally enforceable and non-negotiable in scope. A formal CPS referral, fully documented, supported by 2 years of school records and the counselor flag from 8 months prior, that Blake and his wife had been formally notified of, acknowledged in writing, and then done absolutely nothing about. And a motion requesting psychological evaluation of the home environment as it pertains directly to Zoe's welfare. With each item, my daughter-in-law's color changed. She moved through controlled defensive, through something harder to name, and arrived at a very specific kind of pale that I recognized as the color of someone doing rapid calculations and finding that not a single number lands in their favor. Blake hadn't moved. He was staring at the timeline the way a man stares at the thing he actually did. The CPS referral, Gretchen said pleasantly, has been fully prepared. It has not yet been filed. That is a choice that remains open for the next 72 hours. Real silence followed. The physical kind, the kind that has weight you can feel. And then my son looked up from that page and looked directly at me, not at Gretchen, not at the table, at me for the first time since he'd walked through the door. His eyes were red. Dad? Just that one word, my name, carrying 11 days of everything he hadn't said compressed down into one syllable. I waited, I gave him nothing, I let him carry it the rest of the way himself. I knew. His voice came out rough and uneven. I knew the whole time. Kristen said it was a lacrosse trip and Zoe didn't play, so it's made sense she'd stay home, and I told myself that was reasonable because it was easier than... He stopped. His jaw worked. I was packing my bag the morning we left, and I walked past her room, and she was sitting on her bed with her rabbit, just sitting there, looking at the door. I said, "See you in a few days, kiddo." And I closed the door, and I carried my bag to the truck, and I got in, and I drove. His voice came apart completely on the last word. His wife turned and looked at him sharply. He didn't look back at her. He kept his eyes on me, red and exhausted and entirely without defense. The kitchen clock ticked. I looked at my son for a long moment, long enough to feel all of it, the boy who used to fall asleep watching baseball with me on Saturday afternoons. The boy I taught to change his own oil in this same driveway. The man sitting across my dining room table now who had said, "See you in a few days," and walked to his truck. I let myself feel it for 3 seconds. Then I opened my folder. "I know you knew, Blake," I said it quietly. That was the part that kept me up. He flinched like the words were something physical. Good. I slid the folder across the table. He picked it up with both hands, set it down carefully. His wife grabbed it, read it faster, set it back down considerably less carefully. My updated will, revised and formally notarized by Gretchen's firm the week prior, while Zoe was going down a water slide for the 4th time and negotiating sparkling water from a hotel minibar at 10 o'clock at night. My house in Broken Arrow. The investment accounts my wife and I built over 38 years together. 40 acres of family land out in Okmulgee County that has been in this family for 3 generations. All of it now sitting in an irrevocable trust established solely and permanently for Zoe Merritt. to be released in full on her 21st birthday, managed by an independent trustee, overseen entirely by Aldrich family law. Irrevocable, meaning done, meaning permanent, meaning no attorney Blake or his wife hired at any price would ever lay a hand on it. Additionally, a college fund in Zoe's name, already established, already funded, already earning interest while we were all sitting in this room. My daughter-in-law stared at the document. Then she looked up at me. The chin was no longer up, the shoulders had come down. The armor she'd walked in with was completely gone, and what was underneath it wasn't anger. It was fear. The genuine kind, the specific variety that arrives when a person who underestimated someone discovers they were outmaneuvered at every single turn while they weren't paying attention. Noah, she started. You chose who mattered to you, I said. My voice didn't rise. I didn't lean forward. I said it the way you say something that has already been settled. So did I. Nobody spoke. Good. Gretchen laid out 4 conditions, clear, specific, legally binding, and entirely non-negotiable. 1. Zoe begins weekly sessions with a licensed child therapist within 30 days, all costs covered by the trust. 2. I receive court-enforced visitation rights effective immediately, every other weekend, 2 full weeks every summer, major holidays established in writing. 3. Blake and his wife complete a minimum of 6 family counseling sessions, individual and together, with written documentation of attendance. 4. The CPS referral stays sealed in Gretchen's files for 1 full calendar year. Any violation of any single condition, 1 missed session, 1 incident, anything, it gets filed that same day. No phone call first, no second chance, filed. Gretchen closed her briefcase with 1 quiet, deliberate click. These are terms, she said pleasantly, not suggestions. A long silence passed between my son and his wife. Something moved between them that didn't need words. Then his wife looked at the table and gave 1 short, tight nod. The kind that gives something back that it doesn't get to take again. They signed at 10:38 a.m. Blake stopped in the doorway on his way out. His back was to me, 1 hand resting on the frame. His voice caught on the middle of it. Is Zoe doing all right? I let the question sit in the air for a moment, long enough to be felt for exactly what it was worth. She will be, I said. No thanks to you, but she will be. He nodded at the doorframe, didn't turn around, walked out. His wife followed without a word or a look. The front door clicked shut behind them. 5 months later, November, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Zoe calls me every Sunday at 5 o'clock. She has not missed a single one. Last Sunday, she talked for 42 minutes without stopping for air, which is her personal record, covering her new best friend at school, her therapist who always wears socks with little animals on them, which Zoe finds deeply reassuring, the book report she got a B+ on, and why she believes it deserved an A, and the fact that Jackson let her pick the movie last Friday night, and she picked one she already knew he wasn't going to like. She felt a little bad about it, she said. Only a little, she clarified. That part she got entirely from me. I am choosing to consider it a point of pride. Blake shows up to every school event now, 3rd row, same section, every time. He doesn't make a production of it. No announcements, no gestures. He just shows up and stays the whole time and claps the loudest and doesn't make that about himself either. That is not the same as making things right, but it is the beginning of the road toward it. And I am old enough now to know the difference between a man performing change and a man actually trying to work his way through it. Blake is trying. His wife is harder to read. She is present. She is civil. There are weeks when that genuinely has to be enough, and I am learning to let it be. I'm not a therapist. I don't fully understand what was happening in that house or what she was carrying when she looked at Zoe and saw something she didn't know how to make room for. What I understand is what I saw. A little girl alone in a house eating dry cereal, rationing what she had, asking her grandfather on the phone if maybe she'd been bad and that's why she got left behind. They spent $16,000 on a lacrosse showcase and left her home without a second thought. I spent more than that to make sure she understands she was always worth every thought. That's the whole story. If you're glad you stayed for it, hit that subscribe button and tap the like. It genuinely helps this channel keep going. Drop something in the comments too. This community is real, and you being here means something. Thank you. I'll see you on the next one.